If you're planning to transfer into a selective high school in years 8 to 11, you've probably heard about the HAST and or the Edutest exam. These are the two main assessments that selective schools use to determine whether a student could be eligible to enter mid-high school, whether it's in year 8 to 11. But here's the truth. Most of the HAST and Edutest practice papers you find online are frankly pretty bad. And worse, they can actually do some more harm than good by misrepresenting what the real exams are like. To begin, let's clarify what these exams actually are. The HAST, which stands for the Higher Ability Selection Test, is administered by ASA, the same organization that creates a lot of these larger exams that go beyond just high school exams. It is most commonly used by selective high schools like Girraween, Penrith and Hornsby, Fort Street and Helston, especially for students transferring in years 9 and 10 or even year 11. Edutest is a different kind of test provider that's typically used by elite or top-ranking schools, especially in New South Wales. Schools like Baulkham Hills and James Ruse often use the Edutest for their transfer intakes. These tests are not interchangeable. They differ in structure, question type, and emphasis. So a lot of these practice materials wrongly treat them as if they're very same or similar, which leads to students preparing in the wrong way. One major reason for the poor quality of practice papers is that the number of students preparing for these exams is very small compared to mainstream exams like the Year 6 Selective Entrance Exam, where there's over 15,000 students. In the Selective Year 7 test, there's over 15,000 students who sit the test annually, but for the HAST or Edutest exams, in years 8 to 11 entry, there might only be a few hundred people even trying out across the entire state. Not all schools open up spots every year, and sometimes places only become available if a student leaves. For example, Helston might offer 1 to 4 spots available in years 9, while Penrith and Girraween might open up an additional class in years 10 with a minimum of 20 spots. Meanwhile, some schools like Baulkham Hills or James Ruse might only offer 1 or 2 spots depending on the availability and the year as well. Because of this low volume, most large tutoring companies or test providers don't see much commercial value in crafting and creating high quality and custom built exams just for these tests. Although there may be a few hundred students trying to transfer, the caliber of students are usually higher because they take academics more seriously, but also if there's 150 students going for just 1 or 2 spots, the chances of actually making it in is really low. So they're not really investing the type of resources for this particular exam compared to other exams like the Year 6 exam, where there's a whole class or a whole grade of students that are potentially able to make it in. Instead, what often happens is sometimes the old materials from other exams, like the OC test, scholarship tests, or outdated selective format exams, gets repackaged and sold as HAST or Edutest prep. This leads to questions that are either far too easy, far too difficult, or not even close in structure to what appears in the actual exam. I once purchased a test pack labeled as HAST quite recently and discovered the reading tests were more suited to a Year 5 level, while the real HAST section features more dense informational text with graphs, inferencing style questions in the readings section. It wasn't even in the same ballpark. Another issue is that many of these practice tests are created by people who've never sat the test themselves or who don't have first-hand experience in helping students transfer successfully every year. Just because a tutor or a test preparation company may say that they know these exams inside out. When I was preparing for the HAST exam, I had to do it 3 times before I successfully transferred. If you've seen my video on this channels before, I've made this publicly quite well known. I wasn't able to make it in on my first attempt or even my second attempt. When I was preparing for this, and after each attempt, I wrote down each question type that I remembered, noted down the question styles that challenged me, and identified the areas where I felt more confident or not confident at all. I didn't stop there though. I also asked students from previous years that were attending the same school, especially for those who transferred successfully, and what their experience was like. What they told me helped shape my preparation for the next time that I went out. And fortunately, I attended a school called Penrith High School, and a good number of students in that grade would try out for Girraween, Normanhurst, Helston, Ford Street. So I had a lot of students that I could actually reach out to, and I was confident about reaching out to in terms of their preparation. Back then, there were no tutoring centers or specialized centers that help for these specific exams. So most of my success came from careful research, personal trial and error, and community support. This kind of deep insight is exactly what's missing from generic practice providers. If someone hasn't sat the exam or hasn't worked with students who've done the exam or have passed successfully, or simply rebranding recycled content, and with the resources they provide are going to be very hit or miss, and most likely it's going to be the latter. It's going to be a miss. At Bings Academy, we've taken a different approach entirely, because we've seen the process ourselves. I've done the exam multiple times, and I kind of know what works. We are building papers from scratch based on real questions, real feedback, and aligned to the actual structure of the exam. It's not going to be the exact questions by any means, but we really pride ourselves in knowing the actual format of what is going to come. We're currently focused on developing the HAST materials, and we're looking to Edutest down the line when we are confident it's going to match our standards, but it's not anytime soon. HAST and the normal selective exam, as well as OC, is our primary focus at this stage. Even when a student completes a practice test, the result they get, usually a raw score, doesn't necessarily mean too much without the necessary context. Getting 60% in a reading paper, for instance, might seem okay, but is that a strong score relative to other students in that grade? Did most students score 80% or above, or was it 45%? Without knowing the performance of other students in particular, there's no way to tell whether that score is actually competitive and good enough to make it in from a test scores perspective. In the actual HAST and Edutest exams, students are all ranked. The report you get when after you complete the exam will often indicate where you are at in terms of the percentile per test that you did. For example, are you in the top 10% in reading, the top 25% in maths, or the bottom 15%, etc. That ranking is far more important than just knowing your raw score. Unfortunately, most practice providers don't provide this kind of data or simulation. They allow you to take the test as many times as possible, and they'll show you what you got right or wrong, but they won't help you understand how well you performed compared to other students, and they also doesn't help indicate how accurate these questions are. You have to purchase it, and that's it. So at Bings Academy and what we do, we are trying to develop tools and simulate these exams that include rankings and feedbacks that reflect what a student stands in comparison to other test takers. First of all, it is just questions first that are accurate and aligned to the exams, but we have ambitions to include these rankings and question breakdowns later down the line. But we're not going to just churn it out and make the quality just go pretty low for the sake of it. It is hard though if there's not a large enough sample size, and trying to transfer into a selective high school does not have the highest and the same amount of demand, given it is only a few hundred students looking to transfer in each and every grade. Although by creating practice tests, students not only are able to see their strengths and weaknesses, but also see how far and where they need to be and what areas they need to focus on if they are serious about doing much better in this type of exam. If you're serious about preparing for a selective high school transfer, the most important thing is to use materials based on real experience and insight. Find practice questions that are not only aligned to the structure of the test, that are created by people who know what they're actually good at. A good preparation plan should involve breaking down each subject area, understanding what type of texts typically appear in terms of reading, how the math test is actually structured, and what writing tasks are commonly assigned. It's also important to work with someone or a group of people who have either gone through the transfer process themselves or helped other students do it successfully. Avoid relying on bookstore papers, general tutoring companies, or websites that lump all test types together. The goal isn't just to practice for the sake of practicing. Normal math questions that you do at school or in a normal math curriculum book are so different to what you will expect in the actual HAST test. But practicing in a targeted and more strategic and realistic way is the key to success. The Year 7 selective test is not the same as the Year 7 HAST or Edutest exam. So even high-performing students will be caught off guard if they do the incorrect preparation or they're not knowing what to expect in the actual test themselves. We do online one-on-one tutoring, and as someone who's helped countless students make it in every year, we know that doing the test themselves is probably one of the best opportunities though. Although if you've seen my other videos, it is definitely not an easy process. So please, if you're thinking about paying money or looking for a tutor, save your time and money if you're not serious about it. It's honestly very competitive and it's not for everyone. And transferring into a selective high schools in years 8 to 11 is honestly just so difficult. The spots are very few, the competition is very strong, and there's very little support out there. I try to create and share resources as much as possible, but obviously I cannot be in a position where I just hand out all the papers and material. It's just not sustainable and not viable for us to spend our time or our money to do so. But with the right mindset and with the right preparation and well-designed materials built from real experience, hopefully that will help you. But I really wanted to make this video and let you guys know that I've purchased some of the practice tests from these popular test providers, and they're just very underwhelming. Some were a little similar, some were really off, some were kind of like exams that were given 6 years ago, but obviously haven't been refreshed and just slapped on HAST on top. It is kind of ridiculous, I kind of feel, and I kind of wanted to make this video to share that this is a pretty big problem. We want students to feel as confident as possible when practicing these papers. So if you're looking for practice papers, we are nearly ready in terms of creating these papers and making it available for purchase. But perhaps you can reach out on our website and we can try to tell you an update and find something that can work accordingly too. If you like this type of video, or if you have any suggestions, or if you kind of agree or disagree with the papers that I've kind of seen online, let me know down below. I don't really want to name any test provider. I don't want to get in trouble, but there's only a few out there. So you guys can do the research accordingly. Like this video if you haven't already, so that I'm more motivated to post and share some insights and information, and subscribe if you haven't done so. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.